So in our project, the mobility of students was an essential part. And the mobility of students has different components. It's not only to receive lessons in another country, in another language, in another school, but also to integrate in another culture for a certain period, 2-3 months. And part of this culture is the normal day-by-day life in a hosting families. Spending time with them, enjoying what a Spanish, Italian or Swedish families can propose to their children and their adolescents. So for this reason, I think the role of being hosted in a hosting family, in a family, is essential because it complements what we do at school, giving them the experience of being in a different schooling system.
I think the culture bit is what a host family can bring. For example, Swedish family do eat dinner quite early, 6 o'clock in the evening, and you know, they're quite going into the forest, into the woods, skiing, you know, doing a lot of practice outside. One thing that is big in Sweden, I think in Italy as well, I think it's gaming, of course. Especially boys, they do spend a lot of time gaming. I think foremost, culture brings the Swedish culture without thinking of it. It's just being in a Swedish family brings the culture to the Italian youngsters that's here. So I think that's a good thing.
The issue of hosting families in the program and the exchange, in all exchange programs, and in particular in this one that also used mobilities as a pilot for future mobilities, is something that has to be dealt with a lot of attention and care. Because of course the hosting families will play the major role in making students feel at home, without giving up the inevitable differences in cultural approach to what family life is in the different countries of Europe.
The system is something more than a list of topics, but in the meantime they have the experience to live the day-by-day life in a host family. And that's for me, in terms of understanding the culture of another country, for both the students going abroad as well as for the hosting family to receive a foreign student, is an essential part.
I have 2 host families, and I stayed in the first host family for like 2 weeks, and now I just moved yesterday. They are friends and they're really fun. We get along well, I think. For me, yes. And well, we can discuss about anything. They like to talk a lot, and I can see the different ways to think, to act, to work in general in Sweden and in Italy. So yes, it's really interesting, and they are really, really kind. They're there for me. If I have a problem, I know I can talk to them. If anything happens, I can go to them and talk to them. They're really good families. So yes.
The experience for a hosting family is always inclusive of the experience that a guest student gives to the children of the family itself. So this is more or less why it was not an issue in Italy to find families that would freely and with pleasure host foreign students.
Okay, yeah, I was definitely sleeping. It was like an hour. So yeah, but they are really fun. And yesterday it was the first dinner with the second family, and finally I have a host brother and a host sister, and so it was really good to see in general them talk about their lives here. So yes, it's really cool. And also they are Italians, but they know a lot about Sweden. So yeah.
When we spoke to the hosting families in Italy and we went through a process of selection, we also included a visit to the house in order also to know let's say the setting and the environment and the kind of position that the guest student would have when he or she comes. So 2 teachers of ours visited the potential hosting families, and we selected a certain number of them. But I would say that most hosting families had passed this exam very, very well, because of course the first thing to rely upon is their motivation to give such an experience to their own children.
So in selecting the families, we had some criteria when we started this process. So the first criteria I used is, the reliability of the family. All this family I knew before, but 99% of the family I knew before because are families of students that I have at school. One of the criteria was eventually if there is another adolescent of the same age of the students arriving in this hosting family, of the same age or similar age, so they can be friends together. So that was the second criteria.
Yes, there were some criteria for selection, and these criteria included very practical things, like, for example, the possibility that for the guest students to have his own bedroom, some private space that we know is important. Probably at the end of every day, someone living in a different cultural situation and submitted to a whole day of intense experience that is unusual to him or her, will feel the need to be on his or her own for a while. So the presence of an extra bedroom in the house was one of the criteria, not necessarily a selective one, but let's say an extra that we knew it would be appreciated. And another one was, even to continue with the order of practical things, the presence of cats, dogs, animals, allergies, food preferences or exclusions, vegetarian, vegan, allergies to some kinds of foods like lactose or other. So all these data were collected, and then we proceeded to selection on the basis of a complete picture of all these data, and taking into consideration the motivation of family to host.
The socioeconomic situation, not too much. I didn't use the socioeconomic situation. In my school, basically all the families are from the middle upper school. Most of them, they are from the Italian or Spanish culture or mixed, so quite similar culture. So there are not such a huge diversity of culture. So basically whatever family I selected, basically they came from some basic aspect that are common. And that was quite easy. So I think that the main criteria I use is the previous knowledge of the family and understanding.
A timely communication among families and communication between families and guest students is essential. So the sooner the better, I would say, as far as the time limits of the activity allow it, of course. In any case, a lot of flexibility will be necessary. For example, there were some, not in Italy, but I know that in the program, and here in Sweden especially, there were a couple of issues with families that last minute had to give up their availability to host because of, family reason, and very serious one, like illnesses or accidents that hindered their real ability to host. So I would say that a few months are necessary also to get in touch with the host student, and to let also the sending family explore the new family where the kid will be a guest.
I think that, my process of selecting families was very short and quick. If I had more time, what I think it would be important, and the students of my school and their families, that they become hosting family later, will feel them already part of a process already start. So for example, I think that will be important from few months before, or almost the previous year, that we start contact between the students of the different school of the project. And through the contact between students, it means contact between families. And if I think that a family feels already that their son and daughter or themselves, they are involved in a program, then it will be much easier than the availability of hosting them.
We talked about it. Actually, we met the host, the parents who was going to host, and we spoke about it. What about having a young person into the household? But they are already teenage parents. So and each and every one of these families were looking forward to having a youngster from another country into their home, and they were also thinking it was good for their own teenagers, and they were also thinking it was good for themselves, the parents, and so they were looking forward to it. And that's also in the cultural aspects, to meet youngsters from another country and talk to them about how is it in Italy and what are you doing and what are you doing with your parents and things like that. So yeah, and some of the families we actually asked to be host families have done this before, even when they were children in their family as well. Had students from US, for example, for a year. So yeah, it was quite, and I think one mom said she thought it would be very good for her boy, teenage boy, to meet another culture and things like that. So yeah, they were quite interested.
I publish written advertisement in my school to all the families, so I sent to all the family of my school the advertisement. But in general, the advertisement is not enough, so it's better to advertise than asking in one day to the potential interested families to have a meeting, online meeting, and to discuss with them, clarify all the doubts. So that process was not done, but I would do with more time that process.
Because Sweden couldn't actually do the exchange in 3 months' time as we agreed on, because we weren't allowed of the Swedish authorities. So we could just manage to send our students for 2 weeks. And then we got some difficulties in getting host families, of course. So we have been working quite a lot with that, and at the end we got 3 families. And in the beginning we would like to have 10 families, but it ended up to 3 families who could receive students. And we think it has to do with that Sweden couldn't actually participate in the long term, because earlier exchanges we had, that's been for a week or so, there's been no difficulty in getting host families. So maybe it was this long-term project and that we couldn't participate, that actually was a hindrance. So, but in the end, I think we got some very nice families, and I think our Italian students do like the families, and so it's a fairy tale at the end.
The hosting families, they have a new experience when they decide to host someone, and that I acknowledge that it is not easy to find a family hosting someone for 2 or 3 months. In some cases, their son and daughter, it's part of the mobility, so it's quite easy because they have a free space. And in any case, in my school, there is already the experience of sending their son and daughter 1 year abroad, 1 year or 6 months abroad. Now in Europe it's quite common. There are a lot of institutions and organizations that interchange families. So if you want to send your son to USA for 1 year, they organize everything, and that's quite common. And in my school there are different cases of this. So the culture of sending your son and daughter abroad is already present. The culture of hosting. We developed recently this year, not only with the Erasmus project but with other interchange. We developed this activity in my school, and I think it's a very good experience. To support the families, so there you have to explain them very well. It would be important that during all the process of deciding to host it and then doing, there is always a contact person in the school, always asking the students and asking the hosting family how the experience is going on. It would be important the school organizes something together with the hosting family and the host students during the period of mobility. So not tell them that once they host or student, they are left alone with the students. So they organize something so they are still part of this. And also make that all the hosting family, they feel like a group. So they are living the same experience, a same experience mediated and supported by the school, but they have something in common. Now they are independent family, each of them decide to host their students. But this is important not only to support the hosting family, but it's also important because this is not a project of selected number of students doing an experience in another country, but this must be a school project where basically the few students traveling and going into mobility or the few students arriving in our school are part of a common project. So like a representative of a common project that all the community at school and their parents are together collaborating in this.
Camilla has Swedish courses on Fridays.
So now is the tutor time. Usually meet once a week,
Yeah.
Mondays, 10 o'clock, and then I meet you at Fridays as well.
E almeno così facciamo fisica che ci ha dato gli esercizi.